Recording in progress. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, I've been at 352 for about 15 years. So just a little bit about me. My background is in psychology, actually. So I have a bachelor's in neuropsychology research with a focus on kind of neurophysiology and neuropsychology, and a master's in clinical psychology. And then I started out at 352, starting basically pivoting my entire career and decided to go into design. So I joined as an intern at 352, did a semester as an design intern, learned coding and marketing and project management and a little bit of development, all of that, and realized I was terrible at all of it. And so, but 352 liked my work ethic. So they hired me on to run the internship program. And from there, I continued to learn and grow into the blossoming designer that I was. Since then, I have moved into a research position, and of course now the user experience research associate director. And so most of my time now is actually not spent designing. For about the last 8 years or so, most of my time has been strictly around actually doing user research. So evaluative research, a little bit of generative research, but really just trying to help our development teams make sure they understand our users and move forward. So today's talk kind of stemmed out of something that I learned about last year, which was jobs to be done. And this is a topic that's becoming more and more prevalent. So I will caveat all of this. I am not an expert. I am still figuring this out. And if anybody has better insights than I do in this conversation, please put it into the chat because we can all stand to learn more. But what really happened was I started out on a project and we had these personas that they wanted to build. And I recognized that personas really weren't going to capture this user group because there's such a wide demographic, right? We would have to have like 15 personas. And so I was really looking for the next thing. What is the other thing that I can do to help define what our users need, what their goals are, those kinds of things, so that we can help build towards that, right? When we understand our users' goals, we can then make decisions around feature sets on marketing and all kinds of different business decisions that we need to make. And so this is when Jobs to be Done was first introduced to me. And I started leveraging it really just to try and, again, better define a user group without the strictness and limitations of a persona or even an empathy map, which I'm a big fan of. So how many people here, just show of hands, if you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom, how many people wow, words. How many of you guys have heard of Jobs to be Done before? Just go ahead and do the little raise hand thing. Cool. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so a couple of you. So I'm going to give a high level. And again, I am not an expert here. But Jobs to be Done, again, kind of defines what the objectives or the goals are for individuals, or I'm sorry, for your general user group that are not specific to the solution. So, you might think a job to be done for a user might be, well, I need to check out in an e-commerce site. But that's really not what we're talking about, because that's a task. We're not talking about tasks here. We're talking about overarching goals. So a goal, if we wanted to say, I'm going to jump down here. We wanted to say a goal would be, when I look at my house, I want to be proud of its appearance so that I can make my neighbors jealous. That is a goal, right? That is something that agnostic, whatever the solution is, that is something that somebody can attain. And they can solve that in lots of different ways, right? So they can solve it through landscape lighting. They can paint their house. They can do, change out the plants on their landscaping, those kinds of things. There's lots of ways they can solve for that, right? But if we are a landscape lighting company and we know that this is why people are coming to us, then we can take this messaging, this goal that they have, and I'm pointing over here because my screen's over here, so please excuse me. We can take that goal and we can say, in our marketing materials, be the envy of your neighborhood. And that's going to resonate a lot better than something that maybe isn't a goal for them, which is like, I don't know, maybe security isn't as much of a goal, right? So if we use a security messaging, but really their goal is to be the envy of their neighborhood, to, show up the Joneses next door, it's just not going to resonate as well. We make feature decisions based on the aesthetics of showing what the aesthetics of your house is going to look like versus just kind of providing a list of features or at least list of products. That's going to resonate very differently. And so this is where Jobs to be Done really starts to be leveraged by organizations to help us better define how we can meet the needs of our users by understanding their goals and motivations. So I'm jumping around a lot, and this conversation today, I really do want to be a conversation. I'm gonna have you guys help me build some example jobs to be done in a minute. But there's a couple of notes here that I did want to share because I really like this quote by Clayton Christen. Fully understanding a customer's job requires understanding the progress a customer is trying to make in particular circumstances and understanding all of its functional, social, and emotional dimensions, as well as the trade-offs the customer is willing to make. So again, thinking about the person who's wanting to make their neighbors envious, right? The progress that they want to see is the increase in the enviousness, that's not a word, but of their house, right? So that's their goal. Now, jobs to be done can be defined in lots of different ways. And I'll get into that in a minute, but I did want to share this video with you guys because I thought it was really relevant to kind of how I've learned about jobs to be done. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to try a new share with sharing my sound. I'm going to just play this video really quickly. And I thought this was just a nice example of how organizations can leverage jobs to be done. So this is, he'll explain it in this, but this is what's referred to as milkshake marketing. You guys will understand more as we get started.
We decided that the way we teach marketing is at the core of...
Sorry.
The most helpful way we've thought of it so far is that we actually hire products to do things for us. And understanding what job we have to do in our lives for which we would hire a product is really the key to cracking this problem of motivating customers to buy what we're offering. So I wanted just to tell you a story about a project we did for one of the big fast food restaurants. They were trying to goose up the sales of their milkshakes. They had just studied this problem up the gazoo. They brought in customers who fit the profile of the quintessential milkshake consumer. And they'd give them samples and ask, could you tell us how we can improve our milkshakes so you'd buy more of them? Do you want it chocolatey or cheaper, chunky or chewier? They get very clear feedback. They would then improve the milkshake on those dimensions, and it had no impact on sales or profits whatsoever. So one of our colleagues went in with a different question on his mind, and that was, I wonder what job arises in people's lives that cause them to come to this restaurant to hire a milkshake. So we stood in a restaurant for 18 hours one day and just took very careful data. What time did they buy these milkshakes? What were they wearing? Were they alone? Did they buy other food with it? Did they eat it in the restaurant or drive off with it? It turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold before 8 o'clock in the morning. The people who bought them were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So to figure out what job they were trying to hire it to do, we came back the next day and stood outside the restaurant so we could confront these folks as they left, milkshake in hand. And in language that they could understand, we essentially asked, excuse me, please, but I got to sort this puzzle out. What job were you trying to do for yourself that caused you to come here and hire that milkshake? And they'd struggle to answer, so we'd then help them by asking other questions like, well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire a milkshake. What did you hire? And then as we put all of their answers together, it became clear that they all had the same job to do in the morning, and that is they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they drove to keep the commute interesting. One hand had to be on the wheel, but somebody had given them another hand, and there wasn't anything in it. And they just needed something to do while they drove. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock, so they also wanted something that would just pull down there and stay for the morning. Good question. What do I hire when I do this job? You know, I've never framed the question that way before, but last Friday I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hire bananas. They're gone in 3 minutes, you're hungry by 7:30. If you promise not to tell my wife, I probably hire donuts twice a week, but they don't do it well either. They're gone fast, they crumb all over my clothes, they get my fingers gooey. Sometimes I hire bagels, but as you know, they're so dry and tasteless. Then I have to steer the car with my knees while I'm putting jam on them, and then if the phone rings, we got a crisis. I remember I hired a Snickers bar once, but I felt so guilty I've never hired Snickers again. Let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous that it easily takes me 20 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. Who cares what the ingredients are? I don't. All I know is I'm full all morning and it fits right here in my cup holder. Well, it turns out that the milkshake does the job better than any of the competitors, which in the customer's minds are not Burger King milkshakes, but it's bananas, donuts, bagels, Snickers bars, coffee, and so on. But I hope you can see how, if you understand the job, how to improve the product becomes just obvious.
So as you can kind of see, if we think about everything you just talked about, when we start talking about the actual job here, we start talking, you can kind of think about this as the overarching goal that they were achieving by using the milkshake was when when I drive to work, I want to eat something that's going to make me full and keep me occupied while I drive to work so that I stay satiated and entertained, right? That's a terrible example, but you can kind of see how we can take those user needs and understand from research that we've done what those needs actually are. Now, typically we would gather information from interviews, we would gather it from various sources of data like our analytics or naturalistic observations, those kinds of things. So there's lots of ways we can learn about our customers to understand what their needs are, what their goals are that they're trying to achieve. Just like he was talking about how they would do interviews with their actual customers and say, well, why did you get a milkshake today? You can do that with your customers as well. Well, why did you buy the landscape lighting? Oh, well, because this and this and this. Okay, why did you do that? Why was that important? And there's lots of templates out there for things like interviews to help you narrow in on what those goals are in a way that will help you create these jobs to be done. Now, this all sounds great, right? But this is a researcher's job, right? So why am I talking about all of this when it comes to design? Well, once we have our jobs to be done, then we can start leveraging it to make sure that we're really building those experiences that, again, as I mentioned before, really resonate with our customers, but create intuitive and effective interfaces for people to focus and achieve those goals. So, here I have the notes, and even the designers can ask, what tasks need to be completed? How will the user interact with this service or product? What obstacles might arise during the process? And all of those things can help you better understand some of this process and some of the decisions that are going through the user's mind as they're interacting with your product and deciding to use your product instead of your competitors, maybe a donut or a Snickers bar, right? Technology devs, I mean, you can also use this when you're thinking about prioritizing your features, right? Or thinking about how people are going to be interacting with that and how you might structure the database and what kinds of exceptions you need to have in your software, things like that. I already mentioned the marketing copy, right? If you know that people want to be better than their neighbors, you can use your marketing along those lines. So there's this one little artifact has a huge trickle-down effect, just in general, right? Now, knowing all of this, I want to present a little bit of a case study, and then we're going to walk through this together just to see how it can be applied, because this looks good in theory, but how the hell do you actually do it, right? That was the question that I came to, like, this sounds great. Now what? Because I, was basically figuring it out on my own. And if you look in the internet sphere, there's many books, many articles, and they all tell you different things. So So step one, as I mentioned, would be to learn from your folks, learn from your actual customers. And then from there, you need to decide how general you want your goals to be. And you can have a mix of them. But the one that I mentioned before of like, as a homeowner, I want my house to look really nice, so that I'm the envy of my neighborhood. That's a really high goal, right? Like, we're not talking about like, I want to be able to control my lights from my phone because, my lifestyle is such that blah, 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 right? So we can kind of look at it from these different motivational levels, right? So up here you have like what we refer to as B goals, all the way down to like, these are much more like task-oriented goals. And so I've seen a number of articles that talk about jobs you've done at every single one of these levels and then some. So for you, you need to kind of decide, well, what level do we want to focus on? Do we want to be more aspirational and really understand the overarching goals, or do we want to be a little bit more tactical with it? And so there's different types of formats you can use based on either one of those. So the first one, if you want to be that really high level, this format works really nicely. If you wanted just a general goal, you can think about all those user interviews you did and think about the commonalities and why did they said they wanted their house to look nice. Why was that? And think that through. And you kind of go with this story format. If anybody's agile, this is probably something you're really familiar with. When I blank, I want to blank so that I can blank, right? So when I look at my house, I want to be proud of its appearance so that I can feel superiority over my neighbors, right? Nice high goal. By contrast, if we wanted to be wanted to have something more granular, we could use a template like this. When DIYers are looking to light their house to look better, in a situation where they have no prior lighting experience, they struggle to understand which products they need to achieve the look that they want. Right? Both of these are kind of talking about that aesthetic side and helping to solve for that. But here, when we talk about the struggle, then we can start getting into the more tactical side. We can start getting into the solution. Well, what tools are they hiring right now? Instead of the milkshake, what are they hiring? They're hiring donuts and Snickers. Okay, well, in the case of landscape lighting, they're talking to their friends about their experiences. Maybe they're talking to a contractor, they're calling customer support. Why are they needing to do that? Oh, well, it's easy to get recommendations from a friend on what to do for their house. Their friend already knows what their house looks like. But the barrier for that is that it's not always a good recommendation from a friend. Maybe a friend doesn't really know what they're talking about. And knowing all of this, again, just gives you another layer of information that you can then take to the whiteboard. And as you start working on interfaces and thinking about features and, okay, well, how do we solve for this? How do we get them to stop relying on these tools and use ours instead? And it just gives you this opportunity to start brainstorming on ways that you can create a solution. You can create something to support that goal, that job to be done. So this is kind of how I approached it. And so I came out with a bunch of these statements and I said, okay, well, I have this stuff. What do I do with that now? I'm working with a designer. I'm a researcher. So I did all these interviews. I've got all this knowledge, either through proxy knowledge of my customer support, because they are a wealth of knowledge. If you do not interview your customer support people, make sure you remedy that. Looking at customer data, just like the milkshake habit. Well, they knew that 8 o'clock in the morning, that's when most of the sales were done, right? That gives you another indication as to what is happening so you can dig deeper. So I had all this information, but I needed to be able to tell the designer what to do with it. And so I came up with this cockamamie scheme, which may not work for everything, but it certainly worked for us. And so I wanted to share with you guys today. So I'm going to go over it really high level, and then I want to go through the example with you guys as kind of a workshopping practice thingy-majiggy. And if you guys decide that it's horrible, you never have to use it again. All right. So basically the idea was I came up with, so in this example, I want you guys to imagine we're working for Netflix. Okay. And so we have talked to 1 million customers. In this case, I would imagine most of us are probably customers of Netflix. So you could probably introspect a little bit about your experiences for the purposes of this exercise. But, came up with a bunch of jobs to be done here, right? So high level jobs, customer wants to blank so that they can blank. Customer wants to distract themselves with entertainment so that they can relax. They want to quickly move between episodes so they can continue a story or journey without disruption, right? So some of these are really high level, like they just want to relax. Some are more granular, right? So I have a bit of a mix in here. And so I went through all these various ones, and then I looked at each one of them and said, well, some of these are actually already met with the existing solution, right? So being able to move quickly between episodes and continue watching without disruption is a met job. It is met by the current solution today. So that is a job that is supported. But if we keep looking, customers want to see all of their favorite content in one platform so they can save money. That is definitely not a met job, right? So I went through each one of these things. Some of them required a little bit more discussion. So I did add the discussion notes on here. But you can see there's 3 on here that are just jobs that were not met by the existing product today. So they can't have all of their products from on the same platform. They want to be entertained anywhere so that they can be distracted from the mundane parts of life. Sometimes if you're in a hotel, sometimes it's really hard to connect, those kinds of things. Customer wants to feel good about their desire to indulge in entertainment so they cannot feel guilty about it. I don't know if anybody else has spent too much time on TV. If anybody else has looked at 15 seasons of Supernatural and realized how many hours you've spent watching that. Not just me, cool. But that's one of those opportunities that we can improve the product, right? So from there, I took those jobs we've done. I said, okay, well, of the 3, in this case, 3, I had many more when I was actually doing this. Of the 3, what are the must-haves, what are the should-haves, and what are the nice-to-haves? Of the things that are not happening right now that customers need, how can I prioritize that? And I just realized I'm almost out of time, so I'm not going to be able to do the workshopping, unfortunately. So from here, I really just organize them. So a must-have, customer has to feel good about their desire to indulge in entertainment, right? If they don't feel good about indulging in entertainment, they're not going to do it. They're not going to use your product. In comparison to a nice to have, they want to see all their favorite content in one platform so they can save money. That is not really something that Netflix is going to care about. That is not something that's necessarily good for business. That is a nice to have for the customer, but not a priority for us. So from here, I was able to organize them. And again, there were multiple in each section. And then I took them down to the screenshots. And so I just made a sticky for each one. And so again, the blue is the must have, the green is the should have, and the purple is the nice to have. And I took screenshots of the entire experience and applied them. Okay, well here, let's see, number 1 was they want to indulge in entertainment so they don't feel guilty about it. Here we're talking about maybe they're showing how much money I'm spending. Maybe it's not a great idea when people are trying to get into that mood of like, yeah, I'm going to indulge in some stuff, to be talking about how much money they're spending, reminding them how much time, unlimited movies. Oh God, I spent so much time already on this. This is an opportunity to update that messaging perhaps, or maybe change the UI to better support that job. Similarly, for the being able to log in anywhere, making it easy to log in. I mean, I don't know if anybody else, a few years ago, when you would log into Netflix, you had to go through the whole like username, password, and God forbid you had like an actual difficult password and trying to do it on a remote. It's awful. Now they have like the QR code or, the quick activation, which is great. But this is one of those opportunities where if we can make it easier for people to access, to sign in, this is a place that we can do that. And so we can take a look at that job that's not being met right now and say, this is a good spot that we can do that. I don't know what the solution is yet, but this is some place that we should pay attention to it. Similarly, so I don't know why I put a note here. They might be able, how do people organize their information? If they want to be able to access their stuff quickly, their favorite shows quickly, how can we support them in doing that? Well, maybe a better organization system. Maybe instead of, just your queue, maybe you have like a mood-based queue. Like I really want some romantic comedies in here. I'm on date night. I don't want to create a whole new, this is what my husband and I do. We literally make a whole new profile for the movies we want to watch. Not everybody's going to want to do that. So is there a way that we can support that level of organization, helping them find their favorite stuff in a quick manner? So you can kind of see, like, once you start pulling these stickies in, those jobs in, you can start to see where they might apply in here. For this one, if they want to find their content quickly, this is all recommended stuff at the top of the page. This is all recommended stuff. Like, where is my list, right? Yeah, I see Brittany. And so, we're really making it difficult for people to achieve that job of like, I just want to get in and out. And this is a balance, right, with marketing, because marketing wants these folks, it wants the customer to actually see all this new content instead of binging Supernatural for the fourth time. But this is an opportunity for us to really think about the user and what that experience looks like. So this is what I actually did. And so I was able to put all these stickies on here, that not for Netflix, but for my client, was able to put all the stickies on here, put some comments in, took it to my designer and like walked him through this and said, look, this is an opportunity for us to really focus on this job. This job isn't being met. This is something that they need. How can we accomplish this? Oh yeah, I had this great idea for this other solution for this. Perfect. We can solve that job, make sure it's being met. So that's my case study. That is what I did. And it's a very loose process that I made up, but it's worked for me. So I wanted to share it with you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. So are you open up to Q&A, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So anybody who has questions or comments, if your mic is not working, please put it in chat. We can get it that way. Otherwise, feel free to unmute, talk. As Michelle said, it's a conversation, and I'm going to go ahead and start with it. And so, yeah, I'll let you drink the water. And so when and where did you see this process coming in, Michelle, when we do a UX, say, research? After what or before what do we have to do the process of jobs to be done?
Yeah, it's a great question. So jobs to be done should really be based on actual user information, right? So interviews is the most ideal. Customer service interviews is maybe the second most, because they just talk to these people all the time. But you definitely want to start with some kind of research process and then move into design. Now, typically, I work in an agency, and so typically we have a little bit of leeway in our processes. We don't do waterfall, but we don't exactly do agile either. So we typically kind of lead with some research. We try and involve our designers in that research process, so that they understand, the nuances of those conversations that happen. They're not just getting like a readout. And so from there, we can start building some of these jobs to be done together. This process doesn't take a lot of time, frankly. Like once you've completed the interviews, you could probably do this in a day, maybe a day and a half. I think with my team, we did the jobs we've done, we wrote them all out. There were probably 20 of them, I think. You won't always have that many jobs, for clarity, but and you probably shouldn't. But we had about 20, and we did that in maybe an hour. We wrote those out, and then from there, each step took about an hour to just go through. There's like 3 1-hour meetings of just going through this. So this looks like a lot, but it's really not a long process to get from start to end and get those final recommendations out for the design side.
Got it.
Michelle, I have a question for you. How do you take the user interviews, and how do you take that data and then move to this? There's a big step in there.
There is, yeah. And it's going to be different for everybody, unfortunately. So, the way that I do synthesis on my interviews, I take copious notes. And so I typically read through all of my notes and try and come up with themes of what I heard. And usually, the theme that comes out is, something granular like, that one, something granular like, I wanted my house to look better. That's something that I heard from like 3 or 4 people, right? There's something there. So usually I take those notes and thematically code them by, these themes that I heard, and then try and narrow in on, based on what we heard, why do we think that's happening? There's a lot of conjecture in there. Don't get me wrong. This is not an exact science, but we can, based on what we learned, we can really start to glean some of these things. like I said, there are also templates that are, templated interview questions that are specific for narrowing in on being able to answer and set up for this process of creating jobs to be done. So I definitely recommend you take a look at that. That would make that easier. The interviews that I did leading up to this were not that organized. So that took just a lot of synthesis on my side to get to this point. In fact, I had many iterations of trying this and failing based on the interviews that I had had previously. But I know those templates would certainly help you narrow in on these answers much more quickly. Unfortunately, it's like everything in research, it depends. Like the synthesis, how you get from here to there, it depends. It depends on what you learned, who you are, how your brain functions, all those things. So
do you keep the information in a spreadsheet or in Miro, or?
It depends. I prefer Miro, to be honest, because I can very easily copy. This is just my general interview process. I usually have 2 or 3 note takers, and sometimes they're listening for different things. And so like one might be writing for verbatims, one might be listening for attitudes, commentary, some may be writing down notes about the product, etc. It just depends. But I like to do it in Miro because everybody can see everything, and then you can copy stickies very easily and reorganize them. And so for me, it was, I mean, you guys can see I'm in Miro today. It's just how my brain functions at this point. But certainly, and there's Airtable, there's a number of different programs out there for compiling data. I just honestly, I found them to be more cumbersome than helpful for synthesis. So.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, Michelle, do you have any resources that kind of have a breakdown of how to synthesize effectively, or different ways to synthesize? Are there any recommendations from you personally?
That's a good question. I don't think I'm self-taught, admittedly. So I haven't seen anything, but I know everybody does it a little differently, even at 352. But the general thing that I've seen is thematic coding. So what I like to do is after each interview, everybody that attended on my side, obviously not the participant, we all sit for about 30 minutes and we just note the things that we heard. What were the salient pieces that caught your attention? Write them all down. And then sometimes we'll still go through the notes of like, oh yeah, there was that one thing. Remember that happened? And so we have kind of like a mini summary for each interview. And those are just stickies, really. And so from there, we can go through, after we've done all the interviews, we can go through each mini summary and, oh yeah, oh look, there's that commonality there. And even when we're doing those debriefs, we can say, oh, you know what, just like that other person, they also said this. So we can make that a different colored sticky, so like we can start paying attention. Oh, let's make sure on the next interview, let's make sure we listen for this, see if that comes up again. And you can start to see trends as you're doing the interviews if you're debriefing after each one. So then once you have all your debriefs, then you can kind of go through your thematic coding, just look at all your notes again. What are the main topics that came up? What are the main problems or joys or whatever it may be? What do we think that means? What are the hypotheses that we want to build off of that? So that's how most of us do it at 352. There are some that are a little bit more detailed and use things like Airtable. But those are usually folks who are doing verbatims, and like they'll actually have their interviews transcribed, and they'll like do a word analysis, and it's really intense. I can't remember the name of the book. There's a book about it, about the methodology for coding your research that way. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry, but it's mostly for academia and like really big generative research, which we don't do. So it's a little bit overkill.
Got it.
But if you want to look for resources, I would look for resources on coding research. because coding it basically just means starting to create themes and understanding the commonalities, but that will lead you down the right path.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely needed that kind of direction.
So I have a question as well. How does this play a role as far as task analysis is concerned? Or when you start identifying macro tasks and automating tasks and all that other stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, jobs to be done is really not meant for that level of user interaction analysis. It's really meant for higher level stuff. When you start getting into the micro interactions and stuff of the UX, and you start getting into like this stuff, it's a little hard to document here, but I think you could probably do something similar, either through notation. Oh, well, when you click on this, it opens a modal that, has a loading screen or whatever that interaction is. And if you can take a screenshot of it, all the better, of course, so you can just have a living artifact of it. But you can start looking at some of those interactions here as well. But they're certainly going to be harder to capture. Again, I mean, the goal is not to capture every little thing, but when we know that there is a job to be done that users can't do right now, that's important to them, finding ways that we can help support it. That's really what this process was meant for. So not quite to that level of granularity, but I'm sure there's other ways to do it.
But I mean, just like everything else, right? There's when you research and you design, there's always priorities, right? Which ones are you going to focus on? Which ones are you not going to focus on? So at some point, jobs to be done, I would imagine, would have to somehow inform where you want to focus your efforts on.
Yeah.
Right. So where is that interaction actually? Well, I shouldn't say interaction, but where does that cross with the prioritization of the strategy of where you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, so similar to where I was saying before, it can help inform the feature sets and those kinds of things that are important to users. I mean, it's when you lead with jobs to be done, it helps trickle down to everything, all of your strategies, your marketing strategy, development strategy, all of it. It helps inform what is and isn't important to users, just like a persona would, right? We build a persona or an empathy map. We're going to have the same idea of, a woman between the ages of 35 and 55 or 35 and 38 is probably not interested in college applications because she probably didn't have kids that age. Like that's not something that's probably important to her. We probably can deprioritize that on our whatever website. We can use the same kind of jobs to help define that priority, which is again, kind of this must have, should have, nice to have. We can use the same kind of prioritization to look at the business strategy of, does it make sense to, I don't know, let content for multiple platforms be on Netflix? Maybe that informs the business strategy. Maybe that is so important to customers that we have to change our business to modify, to support that. Really understanding from those user interviews, the importance of those pieces will help you prioritize them and make decisions about the business and the actual functionality that's needed. Does that help, David?
Yeah, I think it does, and I think I'm guessing that the other part of it is you just have to have the conversation with your stakeholders and your management team and whomever about, hey, these are the must-haves, should-haves, nice-to-haves. Which ones we need to focus on based on kind of what we're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, with stakeholders, you're always going to have those conversations, right? There's always a priority conversation that's going to, and what you suggest for marketing or for, the user experience is going to be in conflict with what marketing wants, which is what business wants. That kind of stuff always comes up, right? You're always going to have those priority conflicts. So yeah, it's just a conversation ultimately. But if you come in with the research in mind already, and you can say, we heard this from our customers, our existing customers, it holds a lot more weight than just throwing around,
Opinions
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Which is the other reason it's really important to ground all of this in actual research, because you're making a lot of conjecture, right? There's a lot of assumptions in here, especially since you're building these, in isolation from them. So, and honestly, most customers are probably not going to say, you know, I want my house to be nicer than my neighbors. They're not going to be that vain and just come out with that. But that's probably what's in their head. So, but you got to learn that stuff in research regardless.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think Brittany had a question.
More of a comment, I guess. Thank you for introducing this to me. I'm surprised that I hadn't really familiarized myself with this term yet, but it just feels very consumable. And I guess kind of to the point that you were just talking about, I can totally see how this would make conversations with other teams, especially teams that have different priorities, a little smoother, a little easier for them to understand your reasoning behind things. So yeah, I sometimes I think I have a hard time with synthesizing the data in a way that is consumable to the people that I need to be convincing, and not just other designers who see this and is like, yeah, totally. You know? So, but yeah, thank you for presenting this. It felt very consumable as a person learning this for the first time, and I could totally see it being used. And yeah. So more of a comment, but anyway.
No, that's great. Like I said, I mean, this is new. I've been doing this work for 8 years, and this was new to me as well. I know it's been around longer than that, but I just started doing this, I think last summer. So definitely, there's lots of books. There is the book on it, which I actually haven't read. So if you're curious to learn more, I really suggest you do a deep dive there, start there, and then you can start looking at some of these other resources, because you know, particularly for our products that have such a wide user base, like think about Netflix, right? There's so many different types of people that use Netflix, and their particular, you know, proclivities for how they use it are going to be completely different. But you know what's not different is they probably want to keep watching an episode. They probably don't want to pay a lot of money. You know, there are commonalities there across them. And so, you know, I have my own opinions about personas in general, but if we can get rid of, you know, these personas, you know, Buckhead Betty personas, and just focus on what are they trying to do? How are they trying to do it? Then we can create a solution that's better for everybody, really. I'll just throw this out as well. My other concern with personas is that they don't account for intersectionality at all. And a lot of people write them to be very specific, like the Buckhead Betty, right? Buckhead, for those of you that don't know, is a rich area of Atlanta. It literally had a client that made a persona that was called Buckhead Betty, because she's, you know, the rich stay-at-home wife, you know, with 2 kids and whatever. Like, that is really limiting. And when we think about intersectionality and diversity, like, people don't fit into boxes like that. You can't peg people like that. So it's the other reason I really like having a more open-minded approach to understanding our users.
Yeah,
Makes a lot of
I
sense.
think that's a really nice way to look at it, and also it also like groups people by what they do and what mindset they come in from, rather than their professional or persona kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Brittany, the Jobs to be Done book. I don't know, but I'm sure if you look it up, I'm terrible with names, you guys. I can't even keep my kids' names straight. If I'm sure that if you looked it up, you could find.
Look up Jim Carback on LinkedIn too. He's one of the lead people on that. In fact, I was going to ask Jim Carback with a K, K-A-R-B-A-C-H. And I was thinking we might try and get him as maybe a guest to do because he's done I've actually, when I was in Dallas, got to meet with him and go to one of his presentations. So he does do presentations. I don't think he does them for free, but I think it might be reasonable. We might be able to scrape up some, I don't know, we'd have to ask him, but I think that'd be cool.
Cool. Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, Denise, pass on any contact info you have to some of the admin team of the meetup group.
Yep.
And you can certainly reach out.
Yep. I'll send it via, well, what's the best way? LinkedIn is easiest. Who would I send it to?
Brittany,
I
you're
would
on.
think use the Slack channel might be a better way to reach the group. Do you need that channel QR code again? Or
I
it
think,
was in the chat.
what's the name? It's what's the official name on Slack? Because I've got like 15 Slack channels.
UX
Totally.
Generalist Alliance.
Yeah.
UX.
Generalist Alliance.
Oh, okay. I do need that because I don't have this one, surprisingly.
Just dropped it in the chat.
Michelle, yeah, also put the chat, put the link in the chat for Slack if anybody else wanted to join. And also feel free to drop in your LinkedIn's or anything like that. Happy to connect with people.
So I will go ahead and just make a plug as well. So I am leaving the admin team. So this is my swan song, you guys. But thank you guys for coming today. Certainly, if you guys have any more questions, I'm happy to answer what I can. You're welcome to reach out on LinkedIn, but I am not going to be adminning anymore. I'm very excited to have such a great team taking over. And but that said, I know we are looking for speakers. So if anybody has anything, it doesn't have to be super polished. It can be a mural board, just like this. But happy for you guys to come and talk and just share your experiences. It could be about a boot camp that you did, a new technique you tried, whatever it is. And we just want to learn from each other. So I encourage you guys to reach out to the admin team. And if you have any ideas, or if you know somebody else who would love to speak with us, we'd love to hear it. Research and design. So.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you so much, Michelle, for hosting the meetup group as well with Sue. And that was really great. And Jackie talks highly of you, of course. And yeah, it's been wonderful to have you today, and definitely would love to have you back in the future.
I will be around. No problem.
Yep. So that's awesome. And definitely, of course, anybody else who has any speakers or you yourself would want to present something you're working on, it doesn't have to be 100% finished product or anything like that. Contact us via Slack or the Meetup group chat, or even LinkedIn if you could, if you're already connected, because I think more than half the people I see are probably connected with me as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. And please, if you have any other final questions, you can let us know. All right, so that would be it. And giving it up for Michelle for one last time for running the UXGA meetup.
Thank you.
So awesome to have you. And yeah, regret that Jackie couldn't join us, but she'd also be super happy to see you having the next adventures of your life. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great Tuesday night, or whatever it is, of course, due to Zoom and COVID. Any final words that you want to offer, Michelle, before we close the meeting?
Thank you guys for continuing this community. 5 years ago, our group was only 300 people and we were local to Gainesville. And now I think as of today, we're at 1,358 people. And of course, we have people joining us globally. So it's just really exciting to see the growth of our community. I encourage you guys to keep on coming, bring your own knowledge, share it with everyone. We have the promise of being a really amazing community so long as we share with each other. So bring your friends, bring your mom. I brought my sister once. That was super weird. But bring anybody you know and share the knowledge. So and good luck, everybody. I'll see you around.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.